Well, good afternoon. It's the appointed hour. I'll call to order the meeting of the May 26th meeting for the Oklahoma City Riverfront Redevelopment Authority. The first item is items from the chairman. Do we have any reports from any subcommittees? Maps 3, anything? You got a meeting today?
We have the meeting today.
Moving on to item 3, the minutes from the April 28th meeting. Move approval.
Second.
We have any questions, additions, deletions? Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item 4 is the consent docket. We received the sand mining, oil and gas revenue report and received the Oklahoma River Corridor events update. Any questions on either one of those?
Move approval of both items.
Second.
Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item 5 is primary agenda items. I'm going to move up item 7A 2I, the presentation on the river corridor access points. Police department was going to give that, and I think they have another meeting they need to get to, so we'll go ahead and do that one.
Thank you, sir. I'm Major Brian Jennings. I'm the division commander for Spring Lake Division. A few weeks ago, David Birch approached me about some problems they were having along the North Canadian River with some off-road vehicles tearing up some property that was being leased away. So we met and did a little research on the area, and what we came up with is some major problems we have with access points onto the river. That makes it difficult for us to police it as well. So in order to help out for signage and talking to David, we developed this PowerPoint to show where some of the points were and some our recommendations for that as well. The red will indicate that it's already closed access, and then green would indicate that there is access points to there, no barrier. We're looking at Northeast 23rd Street there on the south side of the road. There's a gate there open where people access it that way. It's just west of Sooner Road. Go ahead. This one is one that we found that does work, a closed gate with a jersey-type barrier, cement barrier there that they haven't moved. So that's a good point that stops access down to that river. Another lock gate through here. What we did find, though, is a lot of gates do get rammed by vehicles, or some vehicles will hook up chains to them and pull the gates open, or cut the locks in other cases. Here's the east of the river on north side of Northeast 23rd Street. They drive along the road there and down to the access. Back that way, there's no barrier whatsoever along that area. Sorry, get my place, I'm sorry. Another point of access there, open road. They just drive down there and they have perfect access to the river. Here's an example of a rock that was put out in front of the road there, and they actually moved that large rock. How, I don't know. They'd have to have a large piece of equipment or a big truck to move it. Another access road there, that's going to be along Northeast 10th Street there. Can't see what road that was. Sorry, go back. West of the tracks, yes. And north of 23rd Street, along 36th Street here, we have several access points. You can see the ruts where the vehicles just drive through there. And with all the rain, the mud, it's a kind of a open ground for these guys to come out there. Another one, you can just kind of buzz through here. It kind of gives you an example of all these open access points we have to deal with. Our recommendation is to put large jersey-type barriers and gates in front of all these access points to limit the access from the off-road vehicles, and also to have large signage that would list the city ordinances for them. We have issues with grilling, swimming, camping, and alcohol, and of course the off-road vehicles going down there. I think if we have those type of signs and those barriers put up, we can help from our end on stopping some of this right here. We've also started enforcing the ordinances with them and trying to get the word out from the people who go out there. We've noticed it's a close-knit group. We've had that problem when I was at Draper Lake. You start getting the word out to a small group of them, the word will spread to the rest of them that it's not allowed there, it's not permitted there, and you'll be cited for it. The other difficult problem we have is we don't have a vehicle that can get down there, accessible down there. Our police cars will get stuck in the mud or high-centered on the big ruts, and so we have to borrow a truck from another division to go down there and take care of that. So enforcement's very difficult for us if we can't get to them along the side of the road. So our recommendation is the signage along those points. This is the option as well. I know there's some issues along the river itself as far as swimming and outdoor grilling. One suggestion may be having signage so many yards apart along the river because what we ran into is the population that goes down there is not aware of the ordinance, so we have to do a little bit of education as well. So maybe signage along there can help inform them that it's illegal down there. Any questions? Hope I covered it, David. Sorry.
I have one question. You mentioned Draper Lake, the signs helped some out there. Is that what I heard you say?
I'm sorry?
At Draper Lake, you said putting the signs up helped out there?
We did. When I was at Draper Lake, we had a similar issue to one of the leased areas, and we put some signage out there and then putting the barriers up as well, prevented them from moving it. Draper was a little bit easier to work because there's only a couple access points that we worried about. Here, we had 8 to a dozen of them to get in through there, so it's like herding cats sometimes. They get done one way, and then you stop that area, and they're going back the other way. In fact, we ran across one access point that it was a private drive down there, and we made contact with the property owner and told him about it, and he said, "Why would I close it? I can't get down there then." And so he's aware of the problem, but he accepts it, and he wants to be a part of it, actually. He likes to go down there as well. Right. So that was a difficult, and we talked to David about that address, see if they can talk to him. But that's kind of the problem we're dealing with. So I think signage and just strong barriers, the little gates don't work. They just cut the chain off of it or ram it.
What is the cost and how long will it take to implement?
That would be up to the city on doing that. I'm just giving some recommendations on what we think we can do to stop it.
Why don't we do this? I would recommend that the trust receive the report and then let us have the Public Works Department and the Parks Department take these recommendations and go back and look at them and see whether we think there's others that might be worthwhile or some that aren't needed, and then put a cost estimate to it and bring it back to you.
Yeah. It looks like part of those locations this past week, the poles would have been gone anyway. It looks like you'd have to replace them every time you had one of these floods that we had recently, but it sounds like we need to do something. We appreciate you checking on all those and giving us some information on how they're getting down in there. I don't know if we can ever stop them completely, but maybe
I don't
we
think
can
you stop
slow
them
them down.
completely. It just has to make it more difficult for them, I think, as much as possible. At least we can limit it to maybe 1 or 2 access points we can watch easier.
Any other questions? Need a motion to receive the report? So moved. Cast your vote. It's passed unanimously. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, moving back to item A, receive the Oklahoma River Maintenance Projects update. Paul, you going to tell us about that?
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. It's been a couple months since I've been here with a report. First item on the report is another update on some cylinder replacements. On May the 4th, we replaced 2 additional cylinders at the Eastern Avenue Dam, and as your report states, since July of last year, all 6 of the big cylinders at Eastern have been totally replaced, so we should be good to go for at least another couple of years there at Eastern. There's some pictures. There shows our river crew in the boat. We've got the big crane. These, as you all are quite aware, these cylinders are quite a bit bigger than the ones at May and Paul Brum. So there's some pictures. Item number 2 is MB0937. It's the Public Works River Maintenance Building, Phase 2. Later in the meeting agenda, you'll hear about the preliminary report on this facility. Back probably 3-4 years ago now, we completed the boat dock. That was Phase 1, and we're at the preliminary plan stage now for Phase 2, which is actually the building that'll allow some office space, some storage space, some equipment maintenance, some maintenance room for our Public Works river crews. Here's the artist's rendering. The estimate right now is right at about $1.9 million. There's funding in the Public Works budget for FY16, which begins on July 1st. To construct this facility, we anticipate approving final plans and advertising for bids in August of this year. So it'll be a big help, because right now the crew office is at 15th and Portland. They have to go there in the morning, check in, hit the time clock, travel here, get their equipment ready, get out on the river. It'll be a big time saver to have everything here, and it'll also provide a covered facility to store all our hydraulic cylinders inside the new building. Item number 3 is the May Avenue SCADA system upgrade. 3 years ago, we undertook an annual upgrade of the SCADA and communications infrastructure at all 3 of the river dams. We started down at Eastern back in 2012 and completed that. Last year, we completed the upgrade at the Paul Brum Dam, and we are well underway to completing the SCADA upgrade at the May Avenue Dam. Here's a picture at the consultant's facility with some inspection going on of the new control cabinet, and here's a picture that was just taken this morning at the May Avenue Dam, where they're actually delivering the new control cabinet on site. We anticipate this project being completed probably by the end of June at the very latest, and that will allow much better communication and control of the dams with the SCADA system now that we have all 3 dams upgraded.
Was this started back in 12 because of we just needed to upgrade them, or is this a regular maintenance item that's going to have to come around every so many years?
With the changes in technology and radio communications, we needed to upgrade, and we decided to upgrade 1 each year. Okay. So this is the final dam here at May that will be upgraded this year. Unfortunately, we had some emergency repairs at the Paul Brum boat lock. Remember, the Brum Dam was accepted by City Council back in July of 2002, so it's 13 years old now, and this is the first, I guess what you would call, semi-major structural problem that we've had at the Brum Dam. There's a plate that the hydraulic cylinder sits on that operates the miter gates that open and close the lock, and 3 of the 4 bolts that hold the plate in place actually sheared off in the concrete, thus not allowing us to operate one of the upstream miter gates on the lock. So we called in our structural engineer and our hydraulic consultant, and we took emergency bids. The cost of the repair is just a little under $14,000, and I'm told by staff that if we could ever get the river to slow down, we could have had this repaired today. But we're actually, I know in the report it says Friday, but if the river would slow down and they'd stop releasing water from Overholser at 13,000 cubic feet per second, we could get the boats in there and we could make the repair. But as soon as the water calms down a little bit, we'll be able to make this repair and have the gate back in operation. So it should just be a couple of days, hopefully.
Do you have a good forecast of when that's going to happen?
No, I don't. I wish I did, but I don't. And the final item on the maintenance report is the response to the severe weather we experienced on May the 6th. As bad as the rain was, here's a rainfall chart. As you can see, we received over 6 inches of rain in a 2.5-hour period, which qualifies it as a 500-year flood event. As you can see, the real intense red there is from about 15th Street down to 59th, and that's a lot of it is in both the Brock Creek and the Lightning Creek drainage basins. And as a result, you go to the next slide, JC. This is a series of photographs that JC took from his office that evening that shows all three of the dams open at 100%, and they were open at 100% for a period of 8 hours. JC monitored them first from his office and then from his home, finally went to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning when the dams kicked back into auto mode. And just to add insult to agony, they were open again at 100% on Saturday for a period of how long? For 2 hours with the rain we had on Saturday. So needless to say, we're moving a lot of water. But all that considered, none of the dams sustained any damage, and everything worked exactly like it was supposed to work. So if you can take anything good out of it, that's what we took. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cupper from the Parks Department, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the damage that was sustained down in the Boathouse District as a result of this event. Are there any questions?
I have one question. Obviously, we've worked our way through the hydraulic cylinders, replacing, repairing them. As a result of these anchor bolts shearing off, have the rest of them been checked?
We immediately engaged our hydraulic consultant to go out and inspect all of those bolts at both the Brum Dam on the other side and at the May Dam where the lock exists, and they were all in good shape.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Doug Cupper, Director of Parks and Recreation. Go ahead. Just wanted to show you some of the highlights of what we were contending with to try to get the river back in shape for our citizens to go forward. Obviously, with the amount of water that Paul was describing a few minutes ago, the debris got carried pretty far up onto the banks, tore away an awful lot of our structures in the Boathouse District. We're working with Mike and Pat to try to figure out how to remedy some of those circumstances. Go ahead. It's not very often in the Midwest that you find this size of a boat up on the banks, but I used to see this a lot down in Florida, but sure shocked me when I saw this. And of course, the bike paths and trail systems all the way along the river have been impacted by the amount of flotsam that has been able to be washed up. Probably a good thing is every storm drain and sewer in the city has now been flushed, and we should be good for another 10 years. But the unfortunate side is it did leave quite a bit of weird stuff behind, let alone silt. We've had our Bobcats out and New Hollands to try to clean up the pathways to get them back in shape for our citizens. Start of the summer is today, so we're hoping to be able to get things back rocking and rolling. Again, more of the silt that was deposited that has to be cleaned up. These shots will show you how the velocity and the flow of the river can really tear things up. Part of the boat docks that we were missing in the Boathouse District ended up way downstream, obviously, in amongst the trees, and a good distance actually from the river. So it's inaccessible areas. It's tough to get at. We don't know whether any of this might be salvaged. The way it's been torqued and torn apart, probably not too much of it's reusable. You can see some of the size sections, and of course you can see the wide spreading of the debris all over the bank. And again, you can see how far off the river these things were left behind. And we're continuing to try to get it all cleaned up and stay up with the amount of silt that still gets washed up. Again, like Paul was saying, we had another event Saturday that brought the river up and brought more into the area for us to deal with. But we're focusing our attention on the river corridor because it is the main hub for our tourism. So some of the park real estate is, I'm not saying being ignored, but it's second tier, and we'll get to that, especially with council members that have parks that have large-scale parks and drainage areas. We are trying to take care of those as well, but trying to get our tourist attractions back in good shape, again, in support of the activities that this esteemed body does, and of course Mike with the Boathouse District. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I was down there the day after all this happened, and these pictures don't do it justice. You just don't realize how much water and how much damage. The size of the tree trunks floating down that river just amazed me. It was something else. And they had not only the boat docks, but you had a number of the small boats go over the dam, didn't you? And,
Yes, sir.
And found them downriver too. So quite an event. Any questions or comments?
Are we insured for this kind of a thing?
Huh?
Do we have insurance?
Our property obviously is insured, and of course, we're still working through it with Pat and Mike and everybody else, but obviously the city isn't liable for the educational institutes' boathouses or their docks or things along those lines. So, and of course, we still are waiting to see if we're going to be a FEMA event to kick all that in as well.
Thanks, Doug. I need a motion on Paul's River Maintenance Projects update first.
So move.
Cast your vote. Passes unanimously. And now a motion to receive Doug's report.
So move.
Cast your vote. Passes unanimously. All right, we're on item C. Approve MOU between the River Trust and Oklahoma City Events for sponsorship for this year's Holiday River Parade, November 27th, in the amount of $25,000.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Have a motion? And a second? Any questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Kathy.
Normally, we receive this request later in the year, and I was wanting to know why we were doing it earlier.
I believe that we have done this historically in June or July, might be a month early, but I don't think it's that much earlier than we've done it before.
It seemed like it was so early.
Good. Paul?
I had a question as far as, I know we're making this donation, and we've done it every year and probably would do it anyway. How much money do we actually make? I suppose our foundation, the community foundation, our account there, is the net beneficiary of that event, and maybe I needed to look at the financial statements more closely, but it would be interesting to know over the years how much money we've actually made on that event.
I think it varies every year depending on the sponsorships we're able to bring in, but I know
It does. It has. It varies from actually north of $100,000 in one given year to $20,000, $30,000, depending on, of course, weather, crowds, expenses. A lot of variables go into that. But the corpus now of this fund that's managed by the Community Foundation is somewhere in the $800,000 range, so it's pretty significant.
I know Mike's goal was $1 million. I don't know how many more years we can talk him into doing it before we can get there, but any other questions?
I had a question. I did check just to see where we had been, and we really haven't gotten any good accounting back to everybody after this. The first 6 years it did turn around and make money. The last 4 years, there's been one donation that's come back in, but the only money that's being made right now is off the performance of the fund, off the interest accrued, and this one donation. So there's been about a $10,000 donation that's been continuing coming in, and then there's been the money on the interest, and that's over the last 4 years. So I think we just have to look at it and say, is this about the advertisement and the exposure, or is this about trying to get the fund? Because the only money that's really been coming back into the fund has been interest performance that would have happened anyway, and then the one donation.
Yes, Larry?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, but I think, haven't we had some competitive influences over the parade the last couple of years, with the Thunder maybe being in town that night, and also the lighting of the Christmas tree at Bricktown?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, is there any way to schedule those events at different times, that maybe we can get the crowd up and get a little more interest in the parade? I don't know.
What if we bring Mr. McAuliffe up to the microphone and let him address that?
Thank you, Mr. Clowers. Just a couple of quick comments. The one thing about the parade is it is a free family event, and we get a good turnout. In some seasons, we do compete with the Thunder. In regards to the past few years, as some of you may know, we lost two major contributors from the River Parade, which was Chesapeake and Devon, which was $75,000. So that explains the issue. So we've been doing well now to put on the parade, still make 10,000 plus. But last year we did bring in Air Comfort Solutions as a major sponsor, and I believe they're returning again this year. As far as my part, I will perform whatever the bodies to be desire. I debated doing it 11th year, so, you know, it's, again, I like to try to hit that $1 million mark, because the plan was, once we hit the $1 million mark, that we'd use the interest from the fund to help support other projects along the river, whether it be matching money for projects or wherever it deemed needed. So I'm doing this at the pleasure of the trust, and if there's other decisions that need to be made in regard to this, I'm open to discussion. So,
what about Larry's comments about moving the date? One year we did move it to a different date, it seems like.
Well, when you move the date, you also compete with college football, and that Friday of Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, I think one reason we do get a good turnout is that families are looking for something to do during the holidays. They've been together maybe Wednesday, Thursday, and by Friday, they're ready to get out of the house. So I think that's one thing that has helped us. And I might mention that, you know, Mike Knopp's staff, the city staff, and some great sponsors, including Paul Dudman, who's been a sponsor every year, in-kind sponsor. This event could not take place without a lot of help and a lot of people. At this point, I think, in reference to Brian's point, about only putting in about 10,000 in each year, the last few years, is whether or not it's valuable to the trust to continue this, and what's the value of having a free family holiday event on the Oklahoma River. So, again, whatever the trust wishes, I'll work with you however you want to go with it.
I move
Any other
approval.
questions? Did I get a motion? Okay. Cast your vote. Passes unanimously. We're on to item D, approval of SPUD 827, Simplified Plan Unit Development south of the river, west of Exchange, a component of the project for the river maintenance facility. Ollie?
Good afternoon. Robbie Williams with Triad Design Group. I also have Cindy Wright with Johnson and Associates here. In regards to the SPUD, there was an existing SPUD that covered the COPTA and Public Works facility. When we got in the planning process for the new Public Works building, the building got larger, and therefore we need more land area. And so the only thing that we could do was to create a new SPUD, which this will be just for Public Works Department. The new SPUD is identical to the existing SPUD in place, except this SPUD allows for a 2-story building, whereas the existing allowed for 1. And this SPUD increases the building square footage from 2,500 to 7,000 square feet. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I've got one real quick. Looking at this map, The original SPUD included the entryway off of Exchange and down in part of the parking lot, but it's not in the new one. Do we not need that included in a SPUD anymore?
Well, the existing SPUD will still remain in place, will still remain in effect. The new SPUD will take over the area that's over the existing
So
SPUD.
this is an overlay. The old SPUD, we're not doing away with the old SPUD.
That's right, because that still falls under the COPTA facility.
Robbie, where is this in the process? Has it gone to Planning Commission yet, or?
This is the first
This
step
is the
in the
first step?
process. And then we will go to the Planning Commission and City Council. And then the next item is the preliminary plans and preliminary report coming here today. We'll go to the SRO-DD Committee, to the River Trust, and City Council for approval. So,
Okay, so when we originally designed the project, we thought it would be something lesser than it is today.
that's correct.
Okay.
Any other question? Need a motion? Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. The next item is to approve the preliminary plans and design report for project MB0937, Phase 2, the River Maintenance Facility Project.
Good afternoon. My name is Walt Joyce with Triad Design Group, and I'm representing the architectural portion of this. And Paul has already briefed you on some of the things that I was going to mention, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version if you don't mind. It's pretty brief, and primarily the things that I wanted to point out is that the project consists of three elements. The first being a 6,048 square foot maintenance building, and that's to accommodate these great big hydraulic items that the river needs to utilize in the dam. There are several that are very large, thus requiring the size of this structure, and others that are smaller, all of them with the intent of the maintenance side. The second element of this project is a storage facility to put roofs over their existing boats, barges, those kinds of items, because right now they do not have that. And the final item is to provide electric radiant heat to their existing boathouse where it's on the water now, and they can do small repairs in there, but in the winter it's very cold, and so what part of this project is to go ahead and insulate that building and provide the insulation power for that. As Robbie mentioned, in the overall appearance of the project, the Scenic River Overlay District design comes into play, and that is primarily there are existing facilities out there that are white metal flat panels that are currently constructed. This facility will do the same thing. You may have seen it in Paul's rendering that he showed you, and also there's a rendering in your package for this that shows the same thing, and it's so that it is consistent with the overlay district design guidelines. And then finally, I want to bring to your attention what we've got as a budget. It is also in your report, but I want to hit the basics of it, and what we're doing is recommending for bidding a base bid of $1,984,641. In the interest of trying to package this in a manner that we can be competitive in terms of the bid, and also what we might be able to or not come into play from a final budget, is that we have separated out three alternates. So we have the base building that we've mentioned, the maintenance building, as the base bid, and then alternate number one would be a storage building in an amount of $105,000. Alternate two is the heating of the existing floating building, which I just kind of discussed with you. And then finally, there's an equipment pad that is right at the water's edge. That was included in discussions in our design process to accommodate a portion of a piece of equipment that currently they have to get it out of the water, go up to the parking lot, snag it, bring it back down, and relaunch. Well, this will allow storage of that right on the water. So it's a very efficient means to connect that piece of equipment. That is a very quick, I recognize that, tour of the facility, but I would be happy to ask any other questions.
Any questions? We need a motion to approve the preliminary plans.
So moved.
Second.
Cast your vote. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6 is claims. Any questions, comments? Cast your vote. Passes unanimously. Item 7 is additional items. Comments from staff. Pat, you got anything on your Director of Development report?
Well, the most significant development, obviously, this past 30 days has been the extraordinary rainfall. City staff, Public Works, Parks, great team effort to do what can be done to mitigate the damage. I get an update hourly in terms of how much release is coming down out of Lake Overholser. And frankly, I think the last number I saw was just a hair under 13,000 cubic feet per second. And I don't recall seeing that kind of number in the last 8, 9, maybe 10 years, so very significant. Other items of interest, we do have some ongoing discussions with DeLisi. I would certainly want to highlight that because of the importance of the revenue from sand mining and how that affects the ability of this trust to operate and do its work. So certainly want to highlight that. And then also the U.S. Olympic Committee has formalized that Oklahoma City will be on the road to Rio. Their formal program of promoting and anticipating the Rio Summer Games in 2016. That gives Oklahoma City a tremendous opportunity for international visibility of the river, of the project itself, and certainly of the grand opening of our Whitewater Center. So big news on that front. NBC Sports is the official broadcaster of the Olympics, and I think you can expect to see some pretty positive exposure for Oklahoma City in general and for our river project in particular. So would allow that report to remain as submitted and would request approval, subject to any questions.
You going to give Mr. Duggan an update on the Native American Center? I knew he was getting ready to ask it, probably. How much, I did just have a curiosity question, how much of that is or was River Trust land? Is it just a bank along the shore? I guess
The cultural center site?
the Native American Center is.
I think it's just along the shore, but Pat, do you know differently?
Well, the site that was transferred from the city to the state of Oklahoma for the purpose of the cultural center, it was, I think, gross numbers, it was about 320 acres. I think net about 180 to 220, and it is on either side of the bank. The river itself and access on either side was reserved, exempted from that transfer so that we could properly maintain and do our part as the Corps of Engineers agreement that dates back to the 50s.
Yeah. So pretty much like the rest of the river, there's a corridor off of the bank that wasn't part of the deed over.
Of the transfer, that's correct.
Any other questions? Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Motion to receive that? Move approval. Cast your vote. Parks and Rec update. Do you have anything else, Doug, other than what you have? Any comments by trustees?
I just had a question. I've just been trying to follow where the money is and trying to look at the audit and seeing where we are. Could we get sometime just a simplified version of the money that comes in and then the money that goes out? Because with oil and gas revenue going in half and then some of the sand going in half, even though we hope it's going to reclaim, and then if I look at the foundation report correctly, that really hadn't, but we're still paying out the $25,000 on that. I'm just, I'm concerned about where we're going, and we're still needing to reimburse the parks. And I think the parks number has held pretty steady for a long time, even though we've probably put more demands on the park. So I guess I'm not sure how all that works, but I don't want to work it out where all at once the River Trust doesn't have any about the time we're really needing to up our, and what our responsibility should be into the future as things go online. So I just thought maybe as an agenda item, we could really look at where all the revenues are and where the expenditures are.
We'll be glad to get the trust a report in the next month or so about projections, maybe over the next 2 or 3 years. Okay.
Any other comments by trustees? Any citizens? Cruisers okay? They floated through it all okay? Very good. Very good. Like everything starting to get cleaned up down there? A little bit? It's going to take a while. Yeah. Very good. Anything else? We are adjourned.